This happens to me every year at this time. It comes to the 21st of September and I feel the change. So the 50% daylight, 50% darkness. And we've been living at a time where there was more daylight than darkness. And we live from March going into June, and it's that journey towards the light. And then the fading light comes through to August, through to September, and then you come to this moment every year, and it turns, and it's like day is done, but life unending dwells ever here. It's like the day is over. The year is over. And you don't wait until the 21st of December or the last day of December to say, well, the year is over. You know it's over when the harvest is in, I suppose, in ancient days, and that rhythm is still inside me when I come to this moment. I look at the trees outside, the beech trees, and they're going yellow and gold. I look at the sun where it comes up over Slievenniren, and you know, it's like it used to rise in Cavan. It used to rise in Fermanagh in the middle of June, and then gradually it kind of moves down the mountain, so it comes up at a different place, and now it's rising sort of, on the brow of Slievenniren, the other side of it would be Ballinamore. The sun has moved from Fermanagh to Ballinamore. But in fact, it's simply that the tilt of the earth has changed, and I'm seeing it at a different angle and a little bit further away. But it means that when it comes up in the morning and it comes up later, there's a slant to it. Like it's harder to mow the grass because you can't find the time where it gets dry enough. Because there's less light, there's less chance of it drying out, and so you wait until about 4 o'clock for the grass to dry, and then you're nearly into the evening again. The slanting sun makes it lovely for taking photographs, and the slanting sun makes it very dramatic. You know, when I'm lying in the bed in the mornings and I'm looking out the window, there's a lovely slant to the light. I'm sitting now, I'll tell you, I'm sitting in my studio. I'm looking out on the autumn leaves, on the wild roses. I'm looking at the little cat, Jack, that got a bang on his back legs during the summer, and he's crawling around in there. And I suppose he's wondering to himself where he's going to go for the winter. Because the two other cats, there's Peabody and there's Charlie, and by God, they are lords of the manor. Like Charlie has his special places on sofas and armchairs in the house, and Peabody lives mostly in the scullery. Now, Peabody is the cat with poor eyesight. He can't see you when you're close up to him. He can only see you when you're at a distance. And then in the close-up, he gets frightened of you because he can't actually see you. This is due to some disease he had in his eyes. I don't know what it was, but he was a wild cat who came to us. And he came with Charlie because Charlie was a settled cat, if you like. He was a cat that came out of a house and left the house because we surmised that maybe they were cruel to him. And maybe they took the sweeping brush to him on a few occasions. I know that because if there's one thing makes Charlie nervous over the past 10 years, and he's been with us now nearly 8 or 9 years, but the one thing that makes him nervous is when he sees you taking a sweeping brush in your hand. He doesn't like it. Anyway, he was out in the wild with Peabody, and the two of them minded each other, and I think what happened was Charlie wasn't able to cope with life in the wild, But the wild cat was able to maybe get food and maybe just have the survival techniques. And what Charlie had was eyesight. And the two cats became one cat, so that when they came first to the house and Charlie would come in and became, the pet cat in the house, the other way, Peabody would come to the window with him or to the door. It'd be like he'd be escorting him in for the night, and then Charlie would come in and sleep inside of the house, and Peabody, the wild cat, she'd sit at the window a little bit for a little while, looking in, almost like to make sure he was happy, and then she'd go off and sleep in the shed. There was a shed where there's an old central heating thing, the oil-fired central heating machine, and she'd sleep in there. Now, I call her she. This is a really interesting question because she is a he, but she behaves like a she. I'll not go further into that except just to say it. Charlie and Peabody, peas in a pod, for nearly 8 years. And so Peabody's place is out in the scullery, never really is comfortable any deeper into the house than the scullery, the back kitchen, where she has her eye on the flap. She can see the way in and out. She knows she can get out there any time she wants. If you bring her further deeper into the house, and she will come with your man, she'll come and she'll sleep with him with her arms around him on the sofa, but on her own she won't. She likes to feel that she knows where the exit is. And that's grand. Now, the two of them are lovely, lovely cats, but they're lords of the manor at this stage. They get fed regularly and very well, and would be very demanding to get their food and all the rest of it, and they have their places to sleep, and they'd be very annoyed if you moved them from the sofa when they have chosen to spend the afternoon on it. But this other little cat, the third cat, Jack, a wild little animal, got its whole back smashed up, probably by a car hitting him, and he was hanging around the place and dragging his arse behind him, and the lady wife was minding him and feeding him and all the rest of it, and now he's just absolutely wonderful. He's a little bit of a limp, but he's doing fine. The only problem is he can't sleep in the shed, because even though Peabody is in the house, Peabody still thinks the shed is mine. And if Jack, the new fella with the limp, goes in there, he's hunted. Absolutely hunted out. You're not coming near that. So there was one time Jack did last winter stay in the shed for a sustained period of time. And you know what happened? I'll put it this way. I went into the shed one morning and found a dead rat in the basket where Jack was sleeping. And I said to myself, Jack didn't catch that rat. And Jack didn't drag that rat into his own bed. But Jack was gone from the shed once the rat was left in the bed. This is like The Godfather, and the only conclusion I can come to is that Peabody is more intelligent than you would think, and that himself, with or without Charlie, conspired to put a rat in Jack's bed in order to banish Jack. Now, isn't that phenomenal? If that's what happened, I mean, maybe you know more than me about the psychology of cats. Maybe it's absurd that they could be so complicated. Maybe the rat came in and died of a heart attack, for all I know. But I suspect that's what happened. That, in fact, it was probably, I would say, Peabody, sitting in the scullery, his eye on the flap, the cat flap, and just beside the shed, and saying to himself, that shed is mine. And so Jack went in there and he said to himself, how do I get that bugger out of here? And he decided, I'll get an old rat and throw it in. That'll sort him out. And it did, because Jack never went back. And that brings me to the point that I'm saying Jack is outside there and he's under the rose bushes, because that's the only place he can go. And he's looking around now for a place for the winter. He's tried a few places. There's a number of big gorse bushes, and they grow like kind of clumps of little trees or shrubs down at the end of the garden. And he's been down there because they would give him great shelter, but they'd be cold. And then there's what you call a cold frame. Do you know the sort of, it's like a lean-to at the level about 2 metres off the ground, and it's for vegetables, so there's a top lid of glass, and that is usually open at this time of year. And he goes in there a few nights when it's raining, but he's still looking for his place. My theory is that when it gets cold enough, there will be a right moment to invite him in somewhere. And I don't know where it is. I think maybe the obvious place would be to try the shed again and put in another little fresh basket or a little box, and see when it's very cold, he'll take the risk of coming in and sleeping there. But it is a big issue for me, you know, like I have a lot to do here, sorting out accommodation for the cat. And sometimes the joy of living in a kind of a remote area, and maybe the joy of just finding a sort of a solitude, finding an imaginal world in the ordinary things around you, is about stuff like this, you know. Like, I do this, it brings me into a world of communication with other sentient beings, and yet it is kind of million miles away from the ordinary life that's going on in the world around me. And sometimes I stop reading the newspapers and I stop watching the kind of television news, and I get absorbed more and more in the natural little things that be happening. Usually with the cats, because that's what I have. But I know that people have dogs. I have friends, I have relations in the family who have dogs. And they love their dogs in the same complex way. And the dog also, it's like the animal draws you into the imaginal realm. The animal calls you out of yourself, calls you out of just being human. And you come into relationality with the animal. And the relationality is the key to everything. It's the key to everything. Like in the Christian tradition, the one single bedrock foundation is this sense of the Trinity. You know, like we get God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit. And I know that we grew up in Ireland and probably in most places in the 20th century with a very reductive, silly, literal idea of the Father, Son and Spirit, so that you could ridicule it as an idea. But in fact, when you go back and you look at what they were trying to say in the 2nd and 3rd and 4th centuries, when you read people like Maximus the Confessor, you realize this whole idea of the Trinity is something about like relationship. It's about like the whole entire universe is relationship. It's connected. There's a transcendent ground of being. There's something that holds this in existence. It's too facile to say. And this is not given the scientific answer, but it's too facile to say, well, it's just here. Well, no, it's not just here. It is here, and it's a mystery that it's here, and it's a beautiful mystery. And when you walk in it, when you stand on divine ground, means like that you're standing in relationship to the earth beneath your feet, and you're sensing it like a mother is holding you up. And if you did that, that would be enough. That would be enough for the rest of your life as a spiritual practice. If you stood, I'm standing now. I'm standing at the patio door. There's a big glass door in front of me, and beyond me, I can see, in the near distance, I can see my lovely cherry tree, which again is now hanging its leaf like yellow leaves, and then beyond that is the gorse. Beyond that is the big, huge, enormous Loch Allen, and beyond that is the mountain. And it's all covered in mist. It's all grey, it's all kind of blended into one thing. Now I'm standing here, and if I spent half an hour in this position, just focusing on the sensations in my feet, the sensation that as I stand here in this gravity, I am being held up. I am being held by my mother. Well, I could be happy doing that now for the rest of my life. And every mystery of being, every kind of dimension of what it is to be human and be alive would come to me, would come to the surface of my skin just in that single meditation. I am being held up in this moment like a mother holds her child. And that's one way to think like of relationality. And then the next way, if you're Christian, and you're not necessarily Christian, I'm not necessarily Christian, but if you're Christian, then let's look at it from the outside, which is always a lovely way to look at religion, by the way. Think about it from the outside. You know? We get caught too much on the inside of something. You know, we think about ourselves as Irish, but we identify as being Irish, so we're on the inside of it, and then we become defensive. And the same is true if you're, white male, or if you're American. We think too much like we are this thing, we identify. But if you just try and think about what you are from the outside, as if you were from Mars and you were trying to understand what it is to be Polish or Irish or American. And the same with religion. I like to think about religion from the outside. I like to think of it almost like it's not true, but let's look at what it does. What is the effects of religion on your life? If you behave religiously, which would mean either attending liturgies and rituals publicly, communally, to express some poetic idea in a mosque or in a church or in a synagogue, or if you do it privately in the privacy of your own studio or your bedroom or some little corner of the kitchen, if there's a moment, and you could be still and you could be standing at the kitchen window, you could be just standing there and there could be somebody else in the room and they could be looking at you and you would be just still, you would be just like standing there, looking out at the tree or the shrub or the traffic. You could be just standing there and nobody would know what you were doing, and you could be standing on divine ground. You could be standing there feeling in the gravity of your body you are also being held up by the earth. The earth is pressing up into your feet and is holding you like a mother holds you. And you could begin to allow that to seep out from every pore of your body, so that the room around you and the city around you or the trees around you or the mountains around you or the ocean around you, whatever is around you becomes a relationship, becomes in some way the manifestation of mother holding you. And this is where you are now, is the most important place to be. There's nowhere else. The universe, in a sense, has construed for 14 billion years, has construed everything to reach this single moment. And this single moment is the one you're standing in right now. That's amazing. I think that's amazing. I feel blessed in myself from the great transcendent ground of all being. I feel so blessed that that is singing through me in this moment. I'm a child of the universe. So if you're Christian, then put into that mix the whole idea that there is a way God reaches more specifically, articulately, in the logos, in the speaking of things, in the revelation. And that goes for the revelation of the cosmos, like in the whole story of evolution, but it also goes for the one single thing that Christians will hold to as unique is the birth, the life, the death, the resurrection of Jesus. And that unique event, the Christ event, being in some way so transcendent of time itself, so kind of manifesting God with us, that it never stops once it began. So that all universe, all history, all life, everything is changed, completely altered, and is made new in this moment of the Christ event, which is still going on, which is still now in this moment. So you or me can say, like the breastplate of St. Patrick, we can say that prayer like we are monks, like it is 1500 years ago. Christ before me, Christ behind. I can look at those, the leaves of the cherry, the leaves of the wild rose in front of me, and I see Christ before me. I see him everywhere. Because everything is Christ. Every atom is the body of Christ. Everything is transformed because the transcendent ground of being has made full everything in this moment. Yet you have to, I suppose, let go of linear time when you're thinking like that. You have to give yourself a little bit of indulgence to be poetic, to dream, if you like. To dream and to feel it as a dream. The only thing that holds us back from embracing the beautiful myth of Christ, the only thing that holds us back is our rational mind, our logic. And it's like we need to be logical and we need to be rational. But the letting go of it is also part of being human. So it's not like the imagination side of our being is a diminished side. It's just a different way of being. And I think that you have to go into the level of the dream. If you think about life as a dream, if you look at all phenomena outside you, around you in the room, and imagine that you are in a dream and you are dreaming these things. Well, my contention is that if you do that for 2 or 3 minutes, you will experience a kind of authenticity about that, and you will know immediately there's something true in this. There's something true. I look at the tree always with my logical and rational perception. I look at it by projecting onto it its meaning to me, and therefore I see a tree. But if I say that I am dreaming in this moment, and this tree is something I'm dreaming. It has manifested in my dream. I know that there's an aspect of experiencing that is authentic. And that makes me feel there's something in there. And if you go to like, I think it's Islamic teachers talk about the imaginal realm in a deep way that kind of shows the veracity or the truth or the strength of these imaginal shapes and structures, that there are shapes and structures that are out there beyond us. And they are real, except that when we try and construct the world with our logic and rationality, when we try and construct the world in a way that is projecting our meaning onto it, we actually don't see these things. And once you get that door open, what comes in? A flood of angels and saints and all sorts of mystical creatures and beings and God knows what else. You begin to live in a beautiful realm. You begin to live thinking about the ancestors, thinking about your mother and father, as that they are there with you, blessing you. They are there. They don't have to be with you. You know, they are in heaven. They are gone and transcended. They are fully changed and transformed into light. But they send you their energy and their love out of joy. And I think that's one thing that I get from religion, is joy. I don't know, I've never found any other way to get joy except through religious practice. You could say that love will bring you joy, but I would say that when love is rational, or when it's literal, or when it's secular, in other words, when I don't see the beloved as in some way the manifestation of the sacred, I won't get the joy that's connected with the sacred. And there is nothing that compares with the joy that you get from the sacred, when you feel that God is touching you, when you feel that the trees are not just beautiful in themselves, but in some way it's like being in a dream, and the dream carries some hidden presence that is really reaching out to you. When I look at as I'm doing now, I'm walking around my studio and I'm looking at the Sinai icon, the icon of the Christ, Sinai, from the Sinai desert, St. Catherine's Monastery, and I'm looking at that. You look at the icon for days, for weeks, or for minutes maybe, and for the first phase, you're looking at it. And when you still your body, and when you become calm and your breathing is relaxed, you can experience it as if you're not doing the looking anymore, but you are being looked at. And it's not that the icon literally in itself is looking at you, but through the form and shape of it and the meaning. I'm imposing the meaning on the icon, right? So my cat is going to look at the icon, and Charlie or Peabody or Jack, if they look at the icon, they're not going to see Christ. Maybe they see colours, maybe they don't notice it at all on the wall. But when I do, I read it as the form and shape of a man with his hand holding a book and the other hand blessing, or maybe it's a kind of a teaching mudra his hand is in. And I read that as, yes, I identify him, that's Christ. And then I identify that with all I know about Christ, all I've read about Christ. And so all that layer of meaning goes into it in a flash. And that's me shaping the world that's out there in terms of what meaning I see in it. And we do that, I do that in everything. And I do it in a flash second. And even if you were to say the word evolution, while I'm not a scientist, and most of us probably know far less about evolution than we think, but just say the word evolution and it triggers a whole multiple layer of meaning and understanding and rational ideas I have in my brain about the nature of reality and the nature of the cosmos. And I think, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about evolution. But again, the other side is when focused on the icon, you feel that the icon's watching you, or not the icon literally, but in some way there is a presence in the room and you are in receiving mode of its love. And so also when you said the word evolution, if you hold on to it for a second, you can shift away from your own perception and wonder about every single bit of evolution being revelation. So you begin to shift from thinking about it from the point of view of the meaning you impose on it to the idea that, well, maybe something is happening outside you, coming towards you. So therefore revelation is what's happening in evolution. And so when you come to this moment and you're standing on your sacred or divine ground and you're feeling the presence of a great mothering love in the entire cosmos, revealing itself right up until this moment, and now this is what it's all about. This single moment is what all cosmic life is about, because it's revealing itself through you, where you are, your locus. You are the wave, not the ocean. So that's how I feel. And at this time of year, comes to the 22nd, you get 50% darkness, 50% light, and I know that from here on it's going to be a beautiful journey into the dark. It's not something I'm going to avoid. It's not something I'm going to be afraid of. It's not something I'm going to sort of ignore and plough on for the rest of the year in the same pace and rhythm as I did in spring and in summer. No. It's going to be a time where I'm going to slow down. I'm going to notice the light fading. I'm going to notice the darkness increasing. I'm going to feel the darkness like a great big cloak enveloping me, surrounding me, with the same love as when the light is shining. And that's a lovely place to be in the dark and feeling the darkness as your friend, not as an enemy. If there is something, you know, okay, I'm shifting a little bit now to some ideas that are kind of Buddhist. They're Tibetan. Because they have this notion that there are two extremes, and both are incorrect. On one side, you have an extreme idea that can be summed up in the word nihilism, that like there's nothing, you know, that it makes people very lonely. It's like the hole where God used to be has become an emptiness, and for 20th century Western culture, it's become this awful loneliness that there is nothing to fill this thing at the centre. And in Tibet, they call that nihilism. And then on the other extreme, there's what they call substantialism, which is to kind of definitively say that there is something that fills the centre. you know. So you have an emptiness where God used to be, and you try and really fill it, and you try and say, this is true. People used to do that with fundamentalist religions. People still do it with fundamentalist religions. God maybe do it more so than they used to. You know what I'm saying? Where somebody is religious, but if you talk to them for 20 minutes, they're religious with a clenched fist. And they're religious in a way that you kind of keenly sense the difference between them and other people. They're talking about other people in a way that they need to convert other people. They're talking from a space where we have the truth. And you say, well, that's scary. I don't want that. I don't want to... Certainly me, as a person, I wouldn't want religion like something that I grip with my fist. I wouldn't want teachings that I hold like a truth. And if it's not religion, what happens is in Western culture, people have found new religions. So I quoted somebody recently, I forget who it is, but you know, the line is, if you don't choose your religion, a religion will choose you. We have a propensity to need to believe. It's natural and normal for us to believe. We have a hole inside our hole. It's like an emptiness in the psyche unless it is filled by the beauty of the beloved, the beauty of God, the beauty of the Buddha, whatever. And if you don't fill it with Allah, if you don't fill it with something, you'll find something that you didn't choose fills it for you. And then people get swept up by all sorts of ideologies. Started in the 19th century, I would say, mostly with nationalism. There was this huge emergence of national identities at that period, and then out of that came further stuff like socialism and communism, and there's no point and no need to go into all that politics of how ideologies give people a sense of identity and how ravenously people swallow ideology and how fulfilled they are by ideologies that sometimes are very, very dark and frightening and totalitarian. And I'm not talking about any particular ideology. We all succumb to some amount of ideology. We all need ideology to another extent. But filling the hole that has been left by faith, by religious faith, whether you fill it with born-again kind of religion, like a religion that is like a clenched fist of truth, or whether you fill it with, you know, new ideological, political ideas or nationalist ideas, and you hold these things like with a clenched fist. That's, and I know it's a metaphor to say you hold it with a clenched fist, but you know what I mean too. You know the clenched fist in your heart sometimes. Oh God, I do. I know how it is, like when you're trying to let go of something, but you kind of clench an idea and you can't let go of it. Maybe a prejudice, you know. Maybe you're annoyed with somebody. Maybe somebody you can't stand on telly, and it's like you can feel your heart tightening. You can feel there's a muscle, like a fist in your heart every time you see this person on the telly. It's like you can't let go of it. We all have those aspects to us every second of the day. But faith, whether it be Christian or Buddhist or anything you like, your own made-up faith, it's like when your heart muscle does the opposite, when it opens out, when it feels so soft it's not even beating, but it's like receiving the beats. It's as if the beats of your heart were coming from elsewhere, as if the beats of your heart were the beats and rhythm of the entire universe. It just happened to be beating within you. And that's probably the way it is anyway. You might say that it's a good question whether and how I could get from my cats to the contemplation of those things. And I suppose what I'm saying is that my cats or your dogs or your horses or whatever your pet is, whatever your animal friend is, mightn't even be a pet. You know, I mean, I recognize that there are people develop a relationship with birds and feed them for the winter. There's people develop relationship with, you know, just animals on the street, just animals that are in the urban, you know, urban foxes. You know, some animal that comes and feeds out of the bin. There's way, and people put up webcams at night to look at stuff. Pay €70 for a camera, I think, nowadays. And you look at it, then you see what happens in your garden or in your yard during the night. But once you connect with the animal world, once you start to look and to listen and to develop a relationship with sentient beings who are outside the human realm, you're taking a step closer to God, because you're letting go a little bit of the tight, rational, human, logical way that we impose meaning on reality. And you're beginning to receive signals and messages from another realm, even if it's only the cat or the dog looking at you. One of the reasons I love cats, or one of the things I love about cats, is that they look at you. I am being looked at by an animal, a sentient being that is not human. And they are calm with me. They feel okay. That makes me feel good. It's like, do you know the way a mother gazes at a child? And that's supposed to be really good for a child. And they say, nowadays they're talking about how the iPhone and the Samsung, all the different smartphones, are affecting the child, because Mammy sometimes is looking at the screen and she's not looking at baby. And then baby feels neglected, even 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And they're feeling neglected because Mammy's eyes are not on me. Isn't that amazing? So that sense of, you know, Mammy's eyes are on me is such a beautiful, rich part of babyhood. And I'm a grown man, I'm 70 years of age. But there is a child in me that still is in the arms of Mammy. And when I go across the threshold of human life, and when I begin to engage in sentient beings that are not human, like the cat, like little Jack now, he'd be sitting under those rose bushes and he'd be trying to keep himself dry and wondering where he'd sleep tonight. But he'd look in through the glass window at me, and he would look at me for about a half an hour, and in a kind of a contentment that makes me feel good. And you get it from horses, those donkeys and horses, but those amazing eyes, those, oh God, the big pool, that big dark pool of a horse's eye as it looks at you. Spend time with that. Just be still and spend time with that looking, and allow yourself to be gazed upon by that sentient being. That's a beautiful journey across the threshold of being human. And when I do this with my cats, it's like, it doesn't matter whether it's a cat or a bird or whatever, but it's taking me across the threshold. I'm getting into a space closer to the Godhead who is in relationship with me. I'm beginning to experience from outside the human realm a presence. And I really do think there's no mystery why animals like cats were often used and kept in temples in ancient Egypt, because they have a wonderful way that invites us out from our own little human logical perceptions and meanings into the mystery of just being in existence, being here, being the universe, and feeling that the condition of being here is a condition of being watched and of being loved. I am here and I am loved. That's what the cat tells me, assures me of. And I've taken the first step in that whole idea of a Trinitarian God. That whole idea that in some way everything is in relationship. Every single atom is in relationship with something else. There is nothing neutral. There is nothing separate. And so we as humans, even though we may have evolved this rational, logical way of perceiving and gathering meaning, we are not separate from the single oneness of just this being. When I get to that stage, I can relax. Oh, I can relax for the whole day. And it's a lovely way to greet the winter. It's a lovely way to greet it, because what you're doing is by doing that kind of, if you like, it's a prayerful exercise of inviting the cosmos into your heart. It's a way of relaxing the muscle of the heart. It's a way of stepping over the threshold from human life into a bigger realm. And if you're in the cat realm, then it's only a short step to the imaginal realm. The realm where you start to say that the only way to see things now for a moment is as if all phenomena were like in a dream. As if you were dreaming this. Because that technique will bring you out completely from what we see as the rational human realm. And when you begin to see it in its dream time, and when you begin to experience authenticity, as I said earlier, you'll know this moment. When you start to look at the tree and say, I am dreaming this tree, you will know after about a minute, there's something authentic about what I'm doing here. There's something authentic about this way of allowing perception to melt into the dream time. This is a dream. I'm in a dream. The mountains are in my dream. And as John Moriarty used to say, and the mountains themselves are dreaming. And the birds in the mountain are dreaming. We're all dreaming. It's a beautiful idea. And it's a beautiful way to begin the winter. To feel, as you then go into the dark, that of course you are not alone. And there's nothing to be fearful of. And there is no loneliness. Because we all belong to each other. All the stars, all the leaves, all the trees, all the cats, all the birds, all the humans, we are all dreaming each other. We're all belonging to each other. And we're going into the dark, into this wonderful time of winter. Thank you. I do, this is a postscript, but thank you for being here. I so enjoy your company. Isn't that a strange thing to say? It's not, not if you've been listening to this meditation. Of course it's not, because in the dream time you are here. And in the dream time, I am with you. It's just a simple technique. Treat all phenomena as like illusions. That's what the Buddhist prayer says. Treat all phenomena, everything, as like illusions. Not that they are illusions, but like illusions. Imagine yourself dreaming all this. I am in a dream time. And that, I suppose, as I say, is what kind of connects me with you, because even though I'm in my studio, I'm looking out the window, I'm walking around the space, I'm looking at things like the icon of Christ or the icon of Mary. Sometimes, an icon, the lovely thing about an icon is your eyes go away from it for a couple of weeks. It's still in the room, it's still there, but you don't notice it. And then after a couple of weeks, your eye turns, and for some reason the light, and it is this autumn light we're getting a lovely blast of it today here in Arigna, in the hills above Lochkallan. Lovely kind of slanting sun coming in through the window. And so a different way the light has just caught the golden halo around Mary's head, and it's lighting it up. And it catches my eye, as they say. It catches my eye. It's not me who has chosen, I want to look at this now. But it says hello to me from out there. There's a combination of the actual gold leaf paint on the icon and the precise angle of the sun and the weather that's allowing the sun to just hit it. And that confluence, you might say, of accidental factors within the whole cosmos catch my eye. They draw me out. How can I not see that it is Mary who is calling to me? That in the dream time, in the non-rational way of thinking about my human life, how can I avoid? How could I avoid that it is Mary, it is the mother of the God, saying hello to me, calling me. She catches my eye. It's a way of looking at that's not logical, it's not rational, it's not scientific in a reductive way, but in a philosophical way and in a kind of a psychological way. If I begin to respond to the universe like that, I will notice very quickly that it's an authentic way. And the authenticity shows up in how relaxed I become, how relaxed my heart muscles become, how I feel no longer any sense that I'm gripping some truth and I'm trying to impose meaning on the day, but no, it feels like I'm relaxing, like I might as well be floating on the ocean. My back floating on the ocean. I'm relaxing into alaya. I'm relaxing. I'm responding to the tenderness of the mother's eye looking at me. And how could I not enjoy your company as well, even though it's not in a rational or logical or scientific way? But there's something authentic about me in this room generating a certain energy through the dynamic of this communication with you. And in it, I send you blessings. And if I can send you blessings in this moment with this technique, then it would be possible for me to visualize even my enemies, even people I don't like, or television personalities I can't stand, or just close enemies. It would be possible for me to visualize them in the same manner in this room and send them blessings, send them love. Feel like white light emanating from my heart out towards them and filling them with joy, with complete happiness. That's not a difficult thing to do with your enemy, you know. And sometimes it's hard to name your enemy because we like to have lots of enemies and we hide them. So we're able to fool ourselves and say, no, I have no enemies. Say, I have no enemies. And then somebody says, well, what about Joe? Oh, yeah, I can't stand him. And what about Mary? Oh, she's an awful... Of course you have enemies. We all have people we feel negative about. You gather them and name them and bring them into your presence in a loving way. And then send them this wish that they would be happy. This wish that they would overcome all obstacles and be completely at peace. Well, I promise you, you will get up from that table happier and more joyful in yourself, because you've transcended all logical meaning to do something that you feel is authentic and makes you authentic. And you will also get up from that table actually feeling warmer towards those people. And like water hitting a stone, if you keep doing it gradually, you'll have an effect. And the stone of your negativity will dissolve into the water of compassion. It's an easy thing to do, by the way. You get your negativity and look at it like a stone. Feel the stone in your heart or your throat or your mouth. Feel it. And then feel it dissolving from the light. The light of the Buddha, the light of Christ. Whoever your mentor deity is, visualized in front of you, there, floating maybe, or sitting on a white lotus, on a moon-shaped cushion, whatever. You see your beautiful, wonderful deity, and see light emanating from the mentor deity's heart, and hitting like a laser, hitting the stone of negativity inside in your rib cage, and feel it dissolving. That's a lovely practice. So, you can see that I'm still talking about beautiful, beautiful Christian ideas. I'm talking about them from the outside, but I'm enthusiastic about them because, I feel they do us good, you know. They do us joyful good, so long as we don't grip them with a clenched fist. And you'll also maybe notice that, again, it always happens this time of year when we start going into the dark, I always begin to meditate on Buddhism. I always begin to go back to the beautiful, amazing, philosophical, but really psychological teachings that are contained in the jewel tree of Tibet. The Lamrim teachings, the Chenmo teachings, the beautiful, wonderful riches of Tibetan philosophy that give me techniques that are not in themselves a revealed religion, but that they kind of sustain my practice as a Christian. And one of the hugely valuable ones is, it's a prayer for others. I've said it, I've done a recitation of it before. I will finish this podcast. Just as it's a special, just as it's the equinox, let me finish with this extraordinary, beautiful blessing that you can do yourself. Like the Dalai Lama does this daily. This is one of his daily prayers. And it's like a drop on the stone of negativity you have for somebody. Well, I'll tell you, this is a good, might only be a slow way of doing it. Might take a long time to get rid of your negativity, but you could try. You could try, and this is one way to try. With the determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings, I will choose to hold them clear. Whenever I associate with others, I will think of myself as the least amongst all, and respectfully hold others to be supreme from the very depths of my heart. In all actions I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as disturbing emotions arise, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert them. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and suffering. I will learn to keep all those practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns. And by understanding all phenomena as like illusions, I will be released from the bondage of attachments. Well, it's a dense prayer. Maybe, if you like, I could, spend a podcast just going through that prayer, just parsing it, because it's really dense. And it might sound a little bit like Victorian prayers sometimes. So, if that doesn't work for you, that prayer, discard it. And if you want to get all the verses and the full length of it, just take the first words I've said with the determination to accomplish, put it into a Google search, and you should find that it comes up, the full text. It's a joy. It's a joy being here. I hope you're experiencing the same joy, in the same here, in the same now, in the same being, enveloped in the same God. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.